Welcome, wanderer, to the Vampire Archives. Today, we revel in an ancient tale, the Farewell Visitation. It takes place in the fertile Rhone Valley of central Germany, which has been a centre of wine production since the time of the Romans, its vineyards flourishing for centuries under the careful hands of generations of vintners. But in the early 1700s, a creeping blight descended upon the land. Grapevines withered, harvests failed, and whispers of an ancient curse spread through the villages. Superstition turned to fear when the townspeople of Groich captured a man accused of unspeakable crimes, branding him a vampire and sealing his fate. As the execution loomed, a grieving mother set forth on a final journey, one that would unravel the line between love and damnation, faith and the supernatural. The Final Visitation is a Gothic tale of sorrow and mystery, where the shadows of history conceal secrets that refuse to die.
The vampire had been caught. The citizens of Groich were ecstatic. At last, they believed the curse upon their land had been lifted. For years, the grapevines had withered, their harvests stunted by what the elders claimed was the work of a demonic presence. The whispers of disappearances and drained corpses had become legend. But now, with the accused in chains, the people rejoiced. The court had found him guilty of unspeakable crimes, and the citizens demanded swift execution. In Pegau, deep within the Rhone Valley, an old woman prepared for a final visitation. The prisoner was her son. He was to die at dawn. Her journey began with prayer. She stood before the altar of her parish church, the air thick with the scent of melted wax and frankincense. From a small red velvet bag she withdrew a silver chain adorned with a delicate cross. As she knelt, hands trembling, she beseeched the priest for a blessing, her voice barely above a whisper. She clutched the chain tightly, feeling the cool metal press against her palm, willing herself to believe that it would grant her strength. When the prayer was finished, she returned the necklace to the bag and tucked it into the folds of her coat. It would remain hidden, a quiet reassurance, until the moment she would need it most. The carriage ride to the prison was long and arduous. The road, uneven and shrouded in mist, wound through barren fields and dense woodlands. The rhythmic clatter of hooves against cobblestone was her only company, save for the occasional distant howl of a wolf. As the hours passed, she allowed herself to drift into memory. She remembered him as a child, a boy with a tender heart, always drawn to creatures small and fragile. He had been different from the others, and the world had been cruel in response. The other children had tormented him, their laughter sharp as knives. He had found solace in books, in solitude, and in the quiet places where the sun cast golden light through the trees. But even then, she had seen the sadness in his eyes, the growing isolation. As he grew into a man, life had only grown harsher, the world refusing to grant him peace. She had watched, helpless, as his dreams crumbled under the weight of an existence that showed him no mercy. The prison loomed ahead, a monolith of stone and iron, its high walls clawing at the sky. This is where she would put her faith to the test. This is where she was granted a final visit to say goodbye. She was escorted through a labyrinth of corridors, the air damp and stale with the scent of decay. Finally, she was led to the chamber where he was kept. The door groaned open, revealing a dimly lit cell. He sat near a window, his back straight, despite the heavy chains that bound his wrists. Moonlight spilled across his face, revealing hollow eyes that still held a glimmer of something pure. She hesitated at the threshold, drinking in the sight of him, before stepping forward. He did not speak, but when their eyes met, an unspoken understanding passed between them.
"My son,"
she whispered, her voice catching in her throat. For a moment, time stood still. She longed to reach for him, to cradle his face as she had when he was a boy. But there was an invisible chasm between them now, one not even a mother's love could bridge. She spoke softly of home, of the things he had loved, the whispering trees by the river, the old rocking chair on their porch, the scent of freshly baked bread filling their small kitchen. He listened, expression unreadable. Then, at last, he spoke.
Do you believe I'm a monster?
His voice was quiet, yet it carried the weight of centuries. She did not answer right away. Instead, she reached into her coat and withdrew the small red velvet bag. From it, she removed the silver chain which the priest had blessed. With deliberate care, she fastened it around her neck, the cross resting just above her heart.
No matter what they say, you are my son, and I will always love you.
A small smile ghosted across his lips, though sorrow darkened his gaze.
Then that is enough.
When the guard signaled that her time was up, she asked him to wait at the door for only a few more moments. She then rose and pressed a trembling kiss to his head. When she had finished, she walked across the cell to the door and asked to be released. She stepped into the corridor and did not look back. There was no reason to. Her mission had been accomplished. She felt at peace. The execution was scheduled for dawn, but before the night was over the alarm was sounded. Shouts rang through the prison, torches flared to life, and the iron gates trembled as guards scrambled to contain the chaos. He was gone. The vampire had escaped. She returned to Pegao in silence. Her carriage rattled through the darkened countryside, but her thoughts remained trapped within the cold stone walls she had left behind. She should have felt fear, perhaps even relief. Instead, there was only a quiet knowing. She had always known. That night, long after the village had gone to sleep, she walked alone into the vineyards. The rows of vines stretched endlessly, their twisted branches clawing at the sky. The wind whispered secrets through the leaves, and the moon cast long shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. From her pocket, she retrieved the small red velvet bag. With tears streaming down her face, she reached inside and gently removed a small, quivering creature, a bat. Its dark eyes gleamed as it clung to her fingertips, its tiny body trembling in the cold night air. She lifted her other hand to her chest, pressing her fingers against the silver cross. Her voice was barely audible, yet it carried across the stillness of the fields.
Be free, my son, be happy. I will always love you.
With that, she tossed the bat into the air. For a brief moment it hesitated, wings fluttering uncertainly. Then, with a final, silent farewell, it rose into the night, disappearing into the endless dark. She stood there for a long time, listening to the wind, waiting for dawn.
Thank you, Wanderer, for venturing into the depths of the vampire archives. Let us hear from you. Comment. Is there perhaps another tale that you might like for us to retrieve for you before we vanish into the shadows of darkness?